Planner Training, Session 4, Task Resourcing and Costs. Okay, so we're back in our example plan that we've been working on, and we want to allocate some people to work on these various tasks now. And what we can do is simply click back into the task and go to the resourcing part of the form. And here we can then pick a user from the list, and there may be some preset. In this case we've got John Smith, and that would have been set with the plan already, and in fact you can set these to ship with standard blank plan templates. In this case though, we're not going to use John Smith, we're going to add a new one, so I'm going to put in here Malk, and I can put a percentage allocation if I want to. If I just press apply, it will apply 100% automatically, like that. If I put another one in here, and then I can add a particular percentage on again and apply. So that's allocated the people that I think are going to work on this task. So we know how long this task is going on for. It's 5 days at 8 hours a day, so it's 40 hours in total down here. We've got 100% allocation, so that's 40 hours for me and 20 hours for Jules. Now we can also store, which we'll have a look at in a minute, a cost per hour for the individual, and that will then pull together a cost that we're going to associate with this task. So let's save that, and we'll see that we've now got that data appearing here in the task data over here as resources. And in fact we can move these columns around so we can see that a bit more clearly. So we can drag that over there, and we'll be able to see that as we build the list up. In fact we can also choose to add that sort of information as one of our display columns here, and we'll have a little look at how we do that a bit later on. So if we want to look at some costings for these resources, we can set that up over here. We can manage our resource information, and here I can store against a particular user what their cost per hour is. So we've got that for me, and we've got the same for Jules. We can put in the rate there, which we can have as £80 perhaps. And in fact here we can add additional resources in one place, and they will build into the list. So we might add a new person here who's going to be, I'll give them a rate as well. So we're building up our resource list here, and this is the sort of thing that we could pre-populate perhaps with our departments' names and cost rates, so that we can use those in assembling standard plans. So we can come back to our next task now, and I can then start to add my people here. Now if I've already included them, they'll be here in the list, and I can simply put them in like this, and now we'll see it's working out a resource cost for us because we know the cost per hour, we know how many hours, therefore we've got a total cost for the task, and it's building that as a combination of the person, the cost per hour, and the number of hours that they're going to be working. So we can pick another one. Let's pick Steve, put him in at a lower level, and we'll get a different cost. So we're building that cost up. Now actually the cost for the task could be made up of people's time, but it could also include an element of fixed cost. So here we can add on fixed cost as well. So perhaps we're purchasing something that we need to use in this particular task, so we can put in a figure for the purchase as well. And now we have our fixed cost and our resource cost giving our total cost for the task. So that's pretty straightforward, and we can go through that adding extra ones on. Now actually once we have our task list here, we don't need to go through each task, close the form down, open the next one. We can use these buttons here left and right to go down to the next task. That data will be written into that task, it'll open the next one up, and when we're in this mode it keeps the same tab open, so we can just come straight down to resource in the next one, and we can put in whatever it is that we need here, and it'll start to build that up, and we could perhaps put a fixed cost into this one as well, like that. Move on to the next one, And we can have some tasks which don't have any resources associated with them, they're just a fixed cost. So we'll have this one as a fixed cost only. And come on to our final task where we'll put something, again, similar in. So we've got Steve in at perhaps 30%. Okay, so that's our costing set up with the raw material, the raw data put in around which resources and what percentage allocations, and therefore what the cost is likely to be, and also the fixed cost elements associated with that. So we're building all that data up nicely, and we can see quite a lot of that information over here. We have the data shown in the columns twice. We have the fixed cost and the progress cost and the actual cost for each particular task. And then we also have cumulative ones which roll that up, and we can see the cumulative one here, rolling that up to the top complete project level of resource cost and fixed cost, etc., to give us a total cumulative cost for the project. So now we've got that, actually the question is what happens when we start to work on updating these tasks with information. So to see this a little bit better, I'm going to move into one of the views. We're going to talk about views a little bit more later, but I'm just going to flip over here into one of my standard views, which is costs. And the cost view brings to the fore the things that I'm interested in when I'm dealing with costs, resources, and then the cost related figures here, so I can see laid out in front of me all the things that are going to be relevant to me. So as I start to go through these and the plan progresses, of course we're going to start recording some percentage complete. So we're going to work our way through the project like this, and as we record a percentage complete, if we just take it to 50% to see the effect of that, we can see our 50% shown on the progress bar here. And what that would mean is that as people are allocated as resources, we might be expecting some of that work to have been done and that cost to be borne by the project. So it's calculating what we call a progress cost. So this is the progress cost for the task. It's 50% through, so it should be half of the resource cost for the task. And in fact we can see that that is the case here. Now, as I say, we have costs in the particular cells, and then we also have the cumulative cost. So here we have cumulative progress cost, which is totaled up at this summary project level. So that makes pretty good sense. If we come down into the next one down, and we again put a 50% progress on it, we'll see we have 9,600. Because it's the only way it can do it, in fact, it applies the same for the total cost of the task. So it includes 50% of the fixed cost and 50% of the resource cost. Now, of course, it might be that the fixed cost doesn't get borne until the end of the task. If we're buying something, we might not pay for it till the end of the task. We might pay for it at the beginning of the task. And so the progress cost isn't always the actual cost of the task. It's an indicated one based on percentage complete of the task. Now, if we wanted to split those, of course, we could look at cases like this, where in these last two tasks we have fixed cost and no resource cost, and this one has no fixed cost and a resource cost. We may have put those in separately because actually, although they're the same sort of activity, the costs are borne at a slightly different time, and we want to reflect that in the cost profile for the project. So we have the flexibility about how we control those. But the last aspect of this is recording the actual cost. So let's come back up to this one up here, and back into our resources tab, and here we have space for the actual cost. So if we've been getting timesheet data in, we can put in here what's actually been booked, what the project has actually incurred, and in this case perhaps we've although the percentage allocations are 100% and 50%, we might have over allocated early on or underspent, and we're going to spend more later on. So we can actually put in what the real figure might be, like that. And we can then start to see the discrepancy between progress cost and actual cost. And again, as we move on to the next task, we can see here we can reflect whether the fixed cost is incurred at the beginning of the task or at the end of the task. So our actual cost here may indeed be the full 12,000 of the fixed cost plus part of my resource cost. So we might put in here 15,200. And that's going to be reflected through really nicely for me into these figures, say totaled across here, so I can see at my various summary levels what my current spend profile is, what my expected spend profile might be, and what the total cost of the project is. So this is really good for budgeting your project and for then recording relatively simply the expenditure against that budget. And of course you can get all this data out really nice and easily, especially when we're using this sort of view format, because we can get this data out by just right clicking on here and doing either copy task list as an image, and that'll bring all this out as a sort of image to drop into a report, nicely formatted, etc. Or we can bring it as a CSV, and we can simply drop that onto a spreadsheet like this, and we'll get all that data back in a position where we could then potentially total it up, do some analysis with it, compare it to the finance data we're getting out of our system, out of our finance system, etc. And later on, when we talk about import and export, we'll see that it would be possible to bring finance data from an ERP as a spreadsheet and load it in against the tasks, especially if we've got a lining up of task IDs, task numbers, etc. We could potentially load finance data in from an ERP onto the Project in a Box system. Now there's one other thing to note here, which is when we're dealing about summary tasks, we'll talk about in a later section. Summary tasks, the resources are rolled up from them, so they can't have any resources against them directly, but they can have a fixed cost against them directly. So it is possible to have this actual cost and fixed cost element and a total cost element associated with a summary. They're showing as zeros in this particular case because this is the project level summary and this is completely calculated. But when we put in some intermediate summaries, which we're going to do in the next session, we'll start to see that that's a possible effect. Okay, so that was an introduction to resourcing and costs. We had a look at how we're going to allocate resources and costs against our tasks, and we also had a look at the very important area in manage resources up here, where we can allocate the resource names and the costs. And actually, once we're starting to build all this up here, we can look at resource usage for particular individuals. So if I want to see all the things that user Malk is involved in, I can get a list of that, find out some information about them, and in fact I can then copy that data out and use it in a spreadsheet if I want to. So that's the end of session 4. And we'll be going on to talk about session 5, which is copying tasks and summaries, dealing with summaries, in the next session. Thank you.